When Egan arrived at last, he was tired and dusty and somehow resentful of the somber thrust of the cliff that had loomed larger and larger as the cart jolted over the fields toward Instep. It was too big, he decided, too proud. He scowled at it jealously, and the first sight of his Uncle Anson's house did nothing to improve his mood. A little girl was sitting on the wall that enclosed the small house and yard, and she studied him critically as he walked along the road to the gate. She was a skinny little girl, with red hair strained back into one long pigtail, and she was covered with scratches. She was cuddling something in her arms, and he saw as he came up that it was a large, rust-colored cat. "You're Egan," the little girl informed him. "I know," he said. "Say hello to Sweetheart," she commanded, and she thrust the cat forward. It was a very well-fed cat, battle-scarred and insolent, and it stared at Egan coldly out of narrow yellowed eyes, the tip of its tail twitching slowly back and forth. Then suddenly, it reached out a claw and scratched him across the cheek. "Ow!" yelled Egan. "Quit that!" The cat hissed at him, twisted neatly out of the small hands that held it, and lounged off down the road. "Oh, for goodness sake," said Egan, touching his wound tenderly. "What a terrible cat!" "Sweetheart is the loveliest cat in the world," said the little girl firmly. "He just doesn't like you. I don't like you either. I'm Ada, and I guess we're cousins." "Guess so," said Egan. He looked at Ada with despair. "You certainly are a mess," said Ada contemptuously. "How come you're all covered with straw?" Then she grabbed his arm with her sharp little fingers and pointed. "Look there! You never saw that before, did you? I see it every day. It practically belongs to me. Uncle Ott ran off up there and the megramum ate him." She smiled rapturously and pointed again. Egan looked up, just as the sun had dropped down behind the mountains. A long shadow fell across the house and yard from beyond the wall, where the green and purple face of the rocky hillside rose into the evening sky. It was huge and silent and cold as a gravestone. As he stared, the mist at the top went blood red in the sunset. "I guess you're pretty scared," suggested Ada hopefully. "Don't be silly," said Egan. "I'm not afraid of anything." But he shuddered just the same. "Here's Egan, Mother," said Ada when she had pulled him into the house. "Here he is at last. Isn't he a mess? Sweetheart scratched him." She giggled and put the end of her pigtail into her mouth. Aunt Gertrude put aside a bit of sewing and came forward. She was as thin as her daughter, and her narrow face was fringed with pale yellow hair. "Welcome to Instep, Egan," she said. "Dear me, you look exactly like your father. I never could understand how my own sister could marry such a man. So big and cheerful and noisy. I do hope you won't be noisy. You're awfully large for your age, aren't you? Dear me, you really do look just like him. And aren't you dusty? Heavens, look at that scratch. Whatever shall we do about Sweetheart? Such a disagreeable cat." Still talking, she led him away to a small room at the back of the house. Egan felt better when he saw the room. There was a cot against one wall, with pillows and a pile of worn and comfortable quilts. The corners of the room were cluttered with little heaps of books and papers, and on a large table, besides the usual pitcher and bowl, there were quills and ink and an old pipe. The cloth on the table was stained with blots and pen scratches. It was all very untidy and very interesting. "This will be your room, Egan," said his aunt. "You better wash yourself. Oh, I do hope you're not feeling too bad after your trip." "I'm feeling fine, Aunt Gertrude." "Oh, what a brave, good boy," she exclaimed. "Of course you're feeling wretched and exhausted. Why don't you lie down? No, you'd better wash first. This is Ott's room, you know. Did you know he's disappeared again?" "My mother told me," said Egan. "Well, I'm sure I don't know what to do," said Aunt Gertrude, sitting down on the cot and wringing her hands. "Ott's been away for 3 days, and just before the fair, too. Not that it isn't easier without him, you know, but he's a good man in his own way, a gentleman, and I'm so afraid he may have gone—" Up there. That would have been a dreadfully foolish thing to do. She dabbed at her eyes with the hem of her apron. Egan watched her and decided that she was enjoying the excitement very much, in spite of her nervous manner. "Oh, you're a bright, clever boy, I can see that," she said, and Egan made another decision. He was gonna like Aunt Gertrude. "Yes," she went on, "you're intelligent. You get that from our side of the family. Oh, well, wash up and take a rest. I'll try to keep Ada quiet, but she's such a stubborn child. I'm sure I don't know what to do with her." She stood up, and there was a sharp yip from under the cot. Aunt Gertrude shrieked and jumped aside. "Good heavens, Aunt, is that you? Aunt, what are you doing under there?" She went down on elbows and knees and peered under the cot, while Egan waited round-eyed. "Oh, it's only Annabelle," announced Aunt Gertrude in a normal tone. "I thought it might be Ott, but it's only Annabelle." She stood up and brushed the dust from her elbows. Poor old Annabelle, she loved him so. How could he have gone away and left her? "Come, Annabelle, come now." "I'm sorry I stepped on you." "Well, she won't come out. I hope you don't mind, Egan. She seems to want to stay there." And Aunt Gertrude left the room and closed the door behind her.